Hey there, in this video, I will tell you about my experience of moving away from Mac and Windows devices over to Linux. It's a very recent change for myself. I'll explain why I did the change and how that experience has been. I'll tell you about what has worked good. I'll tell you about things that have worked better than expected. And I'll also tell you about the things that didn't go as well as you would hope. It will be a little bit longer talk. I don't plan on editing this too much because I just want to talk comprehensively and in a nuanced way about the decision of moving over to Linux. So, a little bit of background about myself. I run an AI and automation agency where I build pretty much anything my customers want in terms of internal processes or AI driven processes. And a lot of the work that I do actually happens in the internet browser, almost all of it, actually, when I think about it. So, in order to do my job, I actually don't even need a laptop. I can actually do work on just this Samsung device in the DeX interface. And that was kind of a reason why I started to be ripe for making a switch away from Mac because I rely less and less on proprietary software. So that's a little bit of background, but I've used Apple for about 10 years as the primary computer platform for myself. Before that, I spent maybe 15 years using Windows devices almost entirely. And overall, I have to say I am a huge fan of Apple devices. The new M series processors have been such a game changer for Apple, and I would say that they are obviously the apex of computing what you can get. And perhaps not for gaming, if gaming is something that you care about, but if productivity is what you are after, then Apple's computers give you unparalleled battery life, performance, and just a phenomenally high quality um, hardware overall. But there's more to the story than just the perfection of Apple devices. So, starting this year, USA got a new president in the office, and this particular cabinet has been implementing many policies that are extremely concerning to myself as a business owner in Europe. They are constantly ignoring international law and regulations. They are tearing up basically all agreements that have been made over the past decades, and they are showcasing that they simply do not respect any kind of agreements. Um, they do whatever they want without accountability. And this is not a business partner that I'm ready to sort of trust my data and trust the continuity of my businesses and my clients' businesses with. And that made me start thinking about okay, what alternatives are there? I'm currently using an American laptop, an American operating system. Most of the software and databases and systems that I use, AI libraries, everything is American, 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 all the way to the bottom. And it kind of made me actually make a switch across the board, not just for the laptop hardware itself, but I've been looking for alternatives first and foremost for how to migrate all the data and databases and all the systems and software stack over to Europe. And actually, I've done that over the past a few months successfully. I have not actually experienced any reduction in the quality or outcomes for my business. So I'm just saying that if you are running a business and you're concerned about the current situation of United States as a responsible guardian for your business data, then I just encourage you to look for alternatives. There are plenty of good, reliable, responsible vendors out there. But putting that aside, that's basically the main driver that makes me want to look for alternatives. Like I said in the beginning, I do think that Apple's computers are as close to perfection as you can sort of get currently. And that perfection is very interesting concept because if you start to think about that perfection, you realize that actually it is a little bit like um, you've been living in this, I call it the gated community. Sometimes outside cities in the United States or in Mexico or somewhere, you will find basically a community where people live inside the walls. Inside this gated community, everybody has a beautiful house. They have a nice car. They eat good food. There's no crime. Everybody has a lawnmower and it's beautiful every day of the year. And there's no disturbances. And that is the definition of perfection that Apple gives you. But actually, the interesting thing about this world is that we live in a diverse world. Outside the confines of that gated community is a whole planet representing human ingenuity and creativity. And there are different ways to think about computing, how to get your work done. And I've heard in the last week so many people tell me that I can never leave Apple because of AirPods, because the AirPods open up so conveniently when I open my laptop. I'm thinking like, oh my God, is that the reason why you're using Apple? The AirPods, how easy it is to connect them? Um, or I can never leave Apple because something, something, something. So it's often very insignificant things actually that seem to be driving people's behavior, and which makes them not even consider any alternatives outside the paradigm of what Apple provides. And it's perfectly understandable because, like I said, it's in many ways perfect, but it is only one version of perfection. And what I can also say about Apple is that it's unbelievably boring. Like iPhones are so unbelievably boring devices. There's nothing creative or interesting about them at all. Of course, they work great. Arguably, they are, again, the best phones, but there's just no edge there. And the same applies to Apple's devices. They are perfect technology. They are super invisible. They never bother you. And they are never, holding you back. So in that sense, it's perfect. But there's a long rant about this one aspect. But what I'm trying to get to is that Linux actually represents something completely different. Linux represents the complete opposite. Linux is the rest of the planet. Linux is the rest of all of humanity outside of the gated community coming up with different ways to do computing, to do work. And a lot of those ideas are brilliant. Some of those ideas are terrible and buggy, but some of those ideas are absolutely fantastic. And that's been my experience. So now that I've explained a little bit about the reasons why I decided to move away from Apple, I can tell you about how the transition's gone. So I bought this. I got this device from a German company called Tuxedo. They make custom-built Linux laptops that ship with their own um, uh, Tuxedo OS, which is optimized for their hardware. The device is absolutely fantastically built. It's lightweight. It's got a stunning screen, a fantastic keyboard. It's all aluminum built, and you can actually have it printed with your own logo, which I find really, really cool. And when I was moving to Linux, my anticipation was that this is going to be super complicated and buggy, and things will not work, and I'll have to configure a lot of things. But the opposite has been the case. When I got this laptop, everything just worked right out of the box. I haven't had to install any drivers. I haven't had to tinker with the console basically at all, apart from a few little tweaks that I did to the system in order to make it a little bit more Apple-like, because there's certain things that I'm missing. But that's a topic for another video. But overall, the experience has been fantastic. And on Linux, actually, many things work perfectly. So all my peripherals, like my keyboards and mice and the sound card that this recording is going into, and as well as the Elgato video capture card, they all work perfectly. Everything works just fine, and I haven't had any issues. So overall, I'd say turning the device on and just getting it ready to use, it's a matter of like 2 minutes of configuration. It's so breezy and easy. I couldn't be happier with that. Overall, I'm very happy with a lot of the free software that you can get from the open source community. There are many ingenious pieces of software that are very creative and fun to use, and actually are highly competitive compared to paid for applications that I'm used to paying for. So I'm actually saving some money now because I could stop some subscription services that I've been using, and I just replaced it with free and open source software. I've been very happy with that. Now, some things that I don't really love about the experience of using Linux is the diversity and the expression and innovation that I mentioned before, which is the driving force of Linux. That is at the same time the sort of the vice of it, because you have to start making choices where in the past you didn't have to do any choices. So, one of those stupid choices, for example, is there is a new generation of the Windows server called Wayland that is replacing X11. And some features and some apps and some things just don't actually work on Wayland, but Wayland is way better in everyday use, while X11 is very reliable. And so, kind of making these kind of choices between, like, okay, which Windows server should I use for when I'm logging in? That is honestly a little bit frustrating and doesn't feel like a good use of your time. But at the same time, we should not exaggerate the inconvenience of that either. This is actually just a sign of progress because Wayland, for example, represents the new paradigm of Windows servers for Linux, and it's absolutely fantastic, actually, what it's able to do and what it achieves. So, I should just be thankful and happy actually for the progress that the community is delivering. So overall, I don't really complain about that. Something that I want to give as a tip for people who are considering moving over to Linux is that one of those temptations that you might be um, confronted with is the concept of distro hopping, so that you will start testing infinite amounts of Linux distros, and you just get stuck installing different versions of Linux to find the one that you like. I would highly recommend, not wasting your time doing that. I've been super happy with the Tuxedo OS that ships with this laptop. It's optimized for the hardware. Everything works. It's super easy to use. It's very intuitive. I really don't care to start testing different distributions. I'm sure there are benefits to all the different distributions. There's different flavors and different user groups, and there's a reason why every distribution works. But as a new user, I don't think it should be on your to-do list to be really distro hopping. So just instead do this, that support one of those dedicated Linux hardware companies like System 76, or with their Pop OS, or Tuxedo team in Germany with the Tuxedo OS. Buy a computer from those guys who optimize uh, the hardware for that Linux distribution. You will have a great seamless experience where you don't have to configure anything. It's very easy to use and very intuitive. And so, um, basically, this is maybe the time to start wrapping up my story from why I moved to Linux, how it has been. Overall, my message is I'm blown away. I'm not going back for my work into Apple at any time soon. I will continue using Linux as my daily business operating environment. As a private user, consumer, I will continue using MacBook Pro because I do composing of music, and I've got like 5 years of songs on my laptop. I'm not going to be switching away from that device anytime soon. But as far as my business goes, my day-to-day workflow goes, I'm sticking with Linux, and I'm super excited to see what the future holds for Linux because I can feel it. I can honestly feel that there's a momentum right now behind the Linux community, and we're so close. We're inches away from Linux being that operating system that is super easy to use and just works out of the box. And it actually is there already. It would be disingenuous to say that it's not easy to use and works out of the box. If you buy your Linux device from one of those dedicated manufacturers, you will have a great experience. So if you're thinking about hopping over to Linux, if you're inspired by PewDiePie, let me be one more convincing voice in your ear and say, just go for it. I don't think you will regret the decision to embrace freedom.